I'm starting something new today. In this episode, I'm going to discuss an essay I wrote on Substack. The title is Academia Adopts the Language of Cowards. And the gist of the essay is that it's actually a call for a fight. It's the most important fight of our generation, and that is the fight for freedom, the fight for freedom of thought, more specifically, defined as Popperian approach towards thinking, which is that science is a form of inquiry and that we don't have a way to define what is true. The best we have is a continuous iteration with trying to find better solutions for problems, trying to correct errors, and keep doing that. This is what science fundamentally is. This is what academia is supposed to be. Instead, academia is turning into a coercive body, into a corrupt, institutionalized body that is trying to impose not just rules and thinking, but also behavior and outcomes. And that's very, very dangerous. There's another word for that, which is collectivism, Bolshevism. We have lots of isms for that. I don't want to be caught in that conversation. I want to keep it factual and non-partisan, because this is a non-partisan call. The same that is happening currently on the left, where we have this pandemic of wokeism around the academic institutions. The same is also happening on the other side, where, for example, the military-industrial complex is continuously spending billions and billions of dollars for petty projects that really have no purpose, and hijacking academia in that sense. So this is a nonpartisan call, for sure. This is a call for freedom, because freedom is the only thing we have. Now, before I go there, I just want to sort of calibrate this. Writing essays is as important as reading books. And like I said many times in this podcast series, the purpose of the Not Even Wrong podcast is to give people a sense of what it feels like to run a hedge fund. I've spoken a lot about readings, about books. We have continuous discussions of books, and I've explained why it's so important to read as a hedge fund manager, because it's conditioning of the mind. Same applies to writing. Actually, writing is just another form of thinking, just another form of expressing yourself, and it's as important as reading, if not more. I've been a professional writer for decades, so I don't see writing as a therapeutic exercise, like, for example, like I see going to the gym. Again, because I was a professional writer. But aside from that, I think writing has a very therapeutic purpose also. But for the purpose of running a hedge fund, I strongly encourage people to read and write, and writing is part of that. And this is the purpose of my Substack. And again, like the reading, it has two main functions. One is to keep a record of my thoughts, and second, it is also to express to the audience what we're thinking, and to give a sense for the audience of this particular podcast series of how important it is to express your ideas and your thoughts. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's December 28, 2022. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is up 70 basis points. The market's down 1.2%. For the year, we are down 73.7%. The market is down 20.9%. We're underperforming by 52.8%. Excuse me. Academia Adopts the Language of Cowards. This is the title of my Substack essay. The link is in the show notes. What am I trying to say here? Let me start with the conclusion. This is a fight. The fight is for freedom, freedom of thought. Freedom of thought is the only thing we have. As I say in the essay, if an alien species came down on Earth and then went back to report, what they would say is that the humans are the animals that do science, and all the other animals don't do science. This is how we differentiate ourselves from everything else that lives on this planet. And I know there's evolutionary biologists, they might say that's not true. Trees, they are doing science as much as we do. They just have a different time scale. I agree with that, but I don't want to be pigeonholed now in this conversation. I'm just saying the way we do inquiry as humans, which has been very successful because we dominate the planet, this is what we call science. Science is the thing that helps us align ourselves with nature. It's the thing that helps us align ourselves with nature. Now, the process of how we do it is through inquiry, through try and error, finding better explanations and replacing other explanations with better explanations. We make errors while we do that, and then we correct the errors. We've said many times on this podcast that the investment process is nothing but a scientific process. It's just a very narrow field where we try to find better investments and replace our investments with better investments. We make errors, error correction. We want to iterate as much as we can. Once we find a company that does the same thing, so this is a sort of a like that Russian thing with the puppet, everything is within itself. So we have the best investment we can find is a company that can iterate fast and has very little cost of error correction, and so on and so forth. And then the employees that those companies have hopefully are in the same sort of spirit of trying to continuously improve and make find new explanations and make errors and correct those errors. So it's all one line. Everything is the same. There's no difference between us investors, the companies, and their employees. It should be ideally all in line, and hopefully we have found those types of investments in particular with Tesla. Now let's get back to the essay. Academia adopts the language of cowards. Why am I calling this out? Because academia has lost that purpose of being the institution that houses science as a form of inquiry. It wasn't like that. There was a time when scientists such as Galileo, such as even further back, Socrates and many others, risked their lives to protect this uniquely human attitude towards inquiry, which is what we call science today, which is this finding better explanations and not being subject to an ideology, not being subject to a coercive behavior and thinking and even language. And unfortunately, today's academic institutions, the ones that we call elite institutions, and I'm focusing on the United States, so let's keep the rest of the world out for this particular essay. What I'm trying to say here is that our so-called elite institutions have completely lost that path and are on this other path of ideology, of coercive, top-down decision-making about how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to talk, and how we're supposed to think. And this is the fight that we need to fight. We cannot let that happen. Just one example, only weeks ago, Stanford, which is the university that I live here next to in Silicon Valley, has tried to impose a list of words that are not allowed anymore on campus, such as America, I think grandfather. Absurd, ridiculous. I think there was a backlash and the list was canceled, but I mean, just think about this. This is an institution that is supposed to be standing for inquiry, for finding explanations, for thinking, for critical thinking, and all of those things, and then they impose language on us. There's a lot more going on. Like I said, by the way, okay, I'm going to talk about the problems right now, but again, this is a nonpartisan call. But right now, we're unfortunately being harassed by the left, by wokeism, by things such as equity, for example, where the outcomes are supposed to be, or where the outcomes of the process of inquiry and the process of gaining status through being better or worse in that process. In other words, the good students and the bad students, there's no such thing anymore. It is supposed to be decided by some sort of cabal of bureaucrats and academics who is supposed to be a good scientist and who isn't. And I've been to conferences in the last couple of months where there were some really interesting presentations, and then all of a sudden somebody shows up and just talks nonsense, and you can tell they're sort of the quota person that was just put in there so they can somehow pretend that they have inclusion and equity. It's just absurd. It's not nice. It's not good for the people who are chosen to be that guinea pig, and it's also, of course, a huge waste of time for everybody else. So again, institutions today in the academic world are being hijacked by the by the political forces that are trying to impose some sort of narrative and some sort of agenda onto society. And that's just another word for ideology. Like I said, this is a nonpartisan call. We had the same problem also. Today's equity and inclusion is yesterday's terrorism. It wasn't that long ago, 9/11, and then the Bush administration and Cheney. They did a lot of things, Homeland Security here, Homeland Security there. They try to curb our freedoms as much as the leftists do. So this is a nonpartisan call. This is the most important fight of our generation. If we adults have the goal to leave this world a better place for our kids than the world that we inherited from our parents, then this is the fight we need to fight. This is a more important fight than the fight against, I don't know, terrorism or the fight against whatever else we're fighting. Certainly more important than all this pandemic paranoia that still is going on. Because if we don't safeguard science as a form of inquiry, then we have nothing left. Freedom and wealth are the two sides of the same coin. Okay? You cannot have wealth without freedom, and you cannot have freedom without wealth. If we curb freedom, we curb wealth creation. And then we're stuck in a top-down world where a few people who somehow safeguard whatever's left of wealth, keep that. We're going to be incarcerated. It's just, I don't know if there's a law of physics or something like that, but you can totally, I'll put all my money on that. If we curb freedom, we're going to end up in a totalitarian society where incarceration and all these other things are going to be the norm. It's already, if you just take this attempt by Stanford to impose language on people, on students and whatever, I don't know, campus people. If you think about, what is the, and so what? What if I don't abide to the rules? What are you going to do? You're going to expel me? Maybe, but maybe in the future you're going to incarcerate me. And then what? Where do we stand? So this is the essay. This is the call. It's a call to a fight. This is a fight. I have in my bio that I enjoy fighting corruption. Now, when I wrote this 20 years ago, I thought, well, I like to fight, let's say, typical corruption, which would be, government employee gets bribed to give a license to a coal mining company in Virginia, that kind of stuff. Now, this is a lot more deep. This is a lot deeper, this type of corruption. This is the academic industrial complex, which is hijacked by the government and hijacking the government. This is sort of a cross-fertilized corruption where the government with the grants is paying people to do certain things that the government wants them to do, and then those people who are receiving those grants impose some sort of thinking on top to all the other people. Now, here's the thing. I actually don't have a problem with institutions, be it Stanford or Harvard, or you name it. If they want to be an exclusive country club that imposes language on people, I am against coercion in that sense. If they want to do what they want to do, that's fine. The private institutions, even the public ones, even Berkeley, I don't care. You want to be a communist institutions, go do it. What I have a problem with is they also have monopolized knowledge creation. In other words, academia is not just a place where we discuss what kind of words we should use in society. It's also the place where knowledge is created, where science is being done. And we need to separate this. If we can't save academia from wokeism or totalitarian coercive thinking, then we have to take knowledge creation out of academia. In other words, we have to create new institutions. So the fight has to be either we fight against this academic industrial complex, or we change it. We create new institutions. That's my suggestion. That's the conclusion of the essay. Thank you.